Mr. Schultz, you've done some work on algal blooms and throughout the United States. I represent an area in the San Joaquin Valley in California where we're greatly impacted by water policy. Delta water issues are a big deal. There's a lot of municipalities around the Delta that are discharging non-tertiary treated water into the San Joaquin Delta, causing algal blooms and nutrient issues that would lead to algal blooms. Have you studied this in your work at the administration?
So I do believe between the partnership that we have an interagency working group with EPA, where we co-chair with EPA, that across the interagency working group, there has been effort in that area. I'm not specifically aware of it myself right now, but we'd be happy to get back to you on details.
Well, I'm very interested in it because, I mean, these algae blooms are a big problem. We're sending a lot of Clean Water Act compliance money to the municipalities, to California for block grants, and it's not getting down to where the rubber meets the road and preventing this kind of discharges that are screwing up the Delta, and it's causing us to use a very large amount of our surface water resources to kind of flush the Delta because we're using it for a toilet. And do any of the others in the panel have comments on this issue? Have you had experience or background? Please, Mr. Raines.
We're seeing all these issues associated with algal blooms in Alabama. A lot of it is non-point source solution, is coming from homeowners, is coming from septic systems. Mobile Bay now, which is one of the Gulf's largest estuaries, has its own dead zones, multiple dead zones. And we're seeing that in all our coastal waters. And so you're talking about treatment, and treatment is a big issue, but I think a lot of your problem may be out of the bounds of treatment in terms of a sewer plant or anything like that. That's certainly the case in Alabama.
Yeah, I know in California there's been actual research that tied especially the Sacramento municipal waste discharges, non-tertiary treated, to providing large amounts of nutrients that have impacted the Delta smelt, which is endangered, probably non-existent at this point, and also interfering with the salmon hatcheries and salmon runs. Mr. Anderson, I read in your testimony you've touched on some of these areas. Do you have any thoughts on these matters or what we can do better to make sure that the Clean Water Act compliance money is keeping these types of non-tertiary treated municipal wastes from going into our waterways?
I definitely have an opinion there. For the longest time, most of the work in the United States was funded through NOAA, through HBARCA, dealing with the ocean, coastal waters, and the Great Lakes, but the EPA was not heavily engaged. And that has been something we've been working very hard to get. That's their mandate, to deal with the fresh waters. And nowadays, we have not only the EPA, we have the U.S. Geological Survey, we have the Corps of Engineers, also all weighing in on these freshwater issues. But in terms of pollution, there's no question that there's a very strong connection between pollution and certain types of the slimy material I was talking about in my testimony, the pond scum and so forth, those species do extremely well in these polluted waters, and they are something that we will have to deal with controls of nutrient inputs in watersheds, but it is a long-term problem. One of the other aspects of the HBARCA legislation is research into control methodologies. So if you could actually attack those blooms, suppress them, remove them, and we have technologies that are being used for that, both marine and freshwater, that are under development. So we can have the long-term approach through the Clean Water Act.
But importantly, I mean, not to cut you off, I really appreciate your testimony here, but most importantly is we have point source discharges happening that the EPA is not regulating at its maximum. I'm from California. 14% of the state is mapped as vernal pool habitat for fairy shrimp, and the EPA is taking great interest in regulating under the Clean Water Act mud puddles. But from what I'm hearing from you is the EPA is not taking great interest in very feasibly accomplished management of discharge from municipal waste facilities.
Well, part of what I'm saying is that it is changing. That was true some years ago when we could not get EPA really to come to the table with funding and so forth. Now they are. Now they're interested. They have a harmful algal bloom program. They are part of a lot of our our conferences and so forth. So the times are changing, and
It's 2024. The Clean Water Act was put into effect on 1972 or 74. It's about time for times to be a-changing, isn't it? I mean, this is kind of insane to me as a farmer, being regulated on 16-square-foot vernal pools when you're clearly saying the EPA has been AWOL on regulating municipal waste discharges into our waterways.
well, they were AWOL when it comes to algal blooms specifically. That's where my knowledge is.
But algal
That's
blooms
what's changing.
based on nutrient discharges from municipal waste facilities.
And even for the small scale, they were not involved. But now I think everyone's recognizing both the small and the large scale impacts. And the EPA is, at least I've got many colleagues now funded and working with the EPA. So it has changed in the harmful algal bloom field in a positive direction. Maybe not as fast as everyone would like, but it has changed.
How exciting. I yield back.